I just want to say on a personal note, thank you for these films. They
Sure.
are beautiful, and I've been watching them in real time on Sunday nights, and then on a Monday I've had a conversation with my dad, and we've got to talk about things that we've never discussed before on the basis of what we've watched. So I really appreciate, you enabling us to have some really interesting and different conversations. So thank you for that.
No, I'm hearing that a lot. I'm hearing that a hell of a lot. People are kind of, different, generations gather around the TV on a Sunday and having discussions afterwards. I think, again, I think sometimes that's what art can do. It can actually further a conversation. So I'm so grateful that that is happens to be a part of the sort of effect of Small Axe. I'm very pleased.
Yeah. Well, Small Axe is an anthology of 5 films. Each of them has their own identity, their own stamp, really, and different styles, if you like. That's what I'm getting from it anyway. I'm imagining that as a director, it has drawn different things from you. How easy has it been to navigate between the films when you were making them and you were putting a different stamp on each film?
Well, for me, it's become easy because I have I've learned to do that. I had to do that. I think especially as a Black artist, you have to sort of have to have more than one bow. Therefore, it's one of those things which sort of, and also don't forget, one piece influences the other one. One piece can have a lot of effect on the other. It goes back and forth. So I do see them as a whole, but at the same time, I can dip in and out of them pretty easy. Yeah, and again, one complements the other. So yeah, it's been pretty straightforward for me.
Yeah. Well, Lovers Rock, I feel as if you really harnessed all of our senses, and I'll just go through them. So obviously sound, the music was imperative, Silly Games with Janet Kay just being a really great sound, sensual stamp, if you like. There was the dancing, so that was what we were seeing. There was touch, the sweaty walls and the plastic covered sheets, taste and smell from those beautiful scenes in the kitchen where they're making the food. Was it important for you? Were you consciously harnessing all of our senses in that way?
No, not consciously. It just happened to be a part of what being Black at that time was about. I mean, I couldn't put it, again, you talk about the smells. I mean, I remember the Calagas fires smelled as well. There's so many, I mean, it was the century, it was about, more than anything, it was about ritual. And what happened, and what, to prepare for the dance. And therefore, all these things came into play. Again, and as well, when the dance happened, the sensuality, the sexuality, is how you moved in a room. You had to move in a certain way. There was a certain kind of style to some extent which you wouldn't even know about, but it was a way of speaking, a way of vibing off each other. I mean, and that also happened within obviously with the a cappella of Lovers, of Silly Games, and also of Kunta Kinte when the dub started. There's a kind of way of being, and obviously it's a lot to do with Blackness. It's also to do with a certain kind of instinctual sort of vibe, and that's what we're lucky to manage to harness during that film. But I think if certain things weren't in place, that wouldn't have happened. So yeah, it was about creating that environment.
So did you have a favorite Grenadian or Trinidadian dish, and was it important for you to include that for your own sense of, getting something from it?
I think it was marked on the board there, but it's roti. Roti was a lot, again, it's a hard task. It's sort of it's a bit of labor, but I love my roti, man. Roti was special. That was like special. Yeah. But now you can buy it. Now you can buy the skins in the shop. But beforehand, no, you have to do it yourself. Yeah.
Authentic. So obviously, you'd have been very small, a young boy when some of the situations were unfolding. So how much did your memory inform what you put on screen?
Well, a lot of it was my memory. A lot of it's Courtie's memory, the co-writer, Courtie Simmons, who his mother used to hold blues at her place. But I remember being taken to blues by my aunt. I think maybe she had to chaperone me, so she put me on a bed And of course, I fell asleep as I was 10 or 11 years old and waking up with all these coats all over me, and finding my way on the dance floor. But as well as that, I remember I used to go to blues myself, but my blues happened like in 85, 80, 86, where things had progressed more to sort of American soul music, but with a bit of reggae, of course. But but the vibe was still the same vibe. So I remember the sweat on the wall. I remember the curry goat and people selling food and the drinks and the canai and the super tea. Obviously, you didn't have super tea then in the early 80s, but yeah, then. So, but things were very, very similar to when I went to blues when I was like 16, 15, in fact. Yeah.
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 So how important was it for you to cast actors of Caribbean descent? So whether it's by birth or by heritage for the Small Axe series?
Yeah, well, a lot of that was kind of important to a certain extent because I think, a certain way of being can become second nature. And I think that, I wasn't deliberately going for that, but the people who were presented to me happened to have that kind of vibe, and then they happened to be of West Indian heritage. So that was because in some ways, what was great for those actors were they were liberated in a way because they were playing themselves often for the first time. So things that they did, which which you could never plan for, it was a part of them already. I think that was kind of that is kind of wonderful when you go. It's like it's Scorsese cast Italian Americans. I mean, Italian Americans are doing things which he could actually help to put on screen, but they're adding their little bits and pieces that he can never think about. And that was it. So that it was it was to some extent it was important to some extent.
Yeah, and just sticking with actors for a moment, there's been a conversation that's been going for a while now around Black British actors playing African American roles, and sometimes they've gotten stick for that. Sometimes they've just largely been hailed for it, if you like. Obviously, you worked with Chiwetel Ejiofor in 12 Years a Slave, and he was playing an African American slave in that. But what's your comment on Black British actors and some of the criticism that they've had for playing American or African American roles?
Well, it's not just Black British actors; it's like African actors too, as far as people from the continent of Africa, and of course, there's obviously West Indian and African actors from the UK. So anyone who's Black but not American really gets that criticism. All I could say is that for me, it's always the best person for the job.
Yeah,
and possibly the best person for the job is someone who is American. And sometimes the best person for the job is a person who doesn't matter if they are American or not. It's just the best person for the job. And if they can add a little bit because of their background and they're as good as, well, brilliant. I mean, Daniel Kaluuya in Get Out. I mean, you can't fault him. So it's got to be, I don't know if anyone sort of, again, sort of, I understand the situation as far as jobs are concerned and possibilities for African American actors. Just like over here, so everyone's scrambling for little pieces of the scraps they throw at us. So it's it's a genuine concern, but at the same time, it's what the filmmaker wants, and I'll always go with what the filmmaker wants.
Now, we've had a really tumultuous year, and the anthology of films, they cover both beautiful and challenging moments of Black British history. But I'm wondering what you think will be on screen in 10, 20 years, 30 years time, and how this period, so the Windrush scandal and the Black Lives Matter and all of those other cultural moments which have been unfolding, I wonder how you feel that they will be portrayed in 20 or 30 years time.
That's not my concern. My concern is now. My concern is the immediate, the urgent, immediate, dealing with what happened with Windrush and getting things sorted out on that, because things are just still up in the air on that.
Yeah.
Plane, was it last week, Wednesday, that took off to Jamaica with people on that flight who, who said who had been, who were here since they were a child, but they're sending them back to prison or wherever, they're sending them back to prison, sending them back to Jamaica. I mean, it's an outrage. It's an outrage. The fact that even Jamaican people have to sort of apply for a visa is an outrage. Yeah. I mean, what we should be talking about is basically, compensation for the times we were our ancestors were slaves in the West Indies. We need compensation. We need to get that money. Reparations. We need to get reparations because this is look at the United Kingdom. United Kingdom wouldn't be United Kingdom without the West Indies and what we did for them. What they're doing in us is putting us back on planes to Jamaica. Or West Indies? What for? What is that about? So for me, it's not about 30 years time. It's about here and now and reparations, and we have to start that conversation. The conversation already started. Let's move on with that. And let's not play.
Yeah, and taking a look back at the stories which you are bringing to the screen, it really feeds into the conversation of what's happening now. And I think it gives a lot of context to people who perhaps are unaware of why some of these situations we're in are occurring. How challenging was it for you to pinpoint the 5 stories which you decided to tell?
Challenging. Well, I always wanted to do the Mangrove. The Mangrove was always number 1. This historical landmark court case. So that had to be, again, the highest court in the land of the Obelian Black people for the first time, questioning and cross-examining the state, so that was very obviously important landmark case. And again, also the joy, the resistance of joy, the resistance of, finding pleasure in one another, which was very, very important. You work from 9 to 5, and you work for the weekend. You work for the blues. And that's my mother was telling me the same, because she was so happy watching, because she had the blues in the 60s, in the mid early 60s. So it was interesting. My mother, but it was based. Love Is What was based on my aunt. And I remember she wasn't allowed to go, and my uncle used to leave the back door open for her to go outside and to come back. So it was very much a Cinderella story, and about our own pleasure in ourselves and what we can create to basically transform and transcend the environment that we're in. And then we have Leroy Logan, Red, White, and Blue, which was about the sort of institutions and the workplace, really. And I think any Black person who looks at Red, White, and Blue will recognize themselves in it immediately. Through no fault of his own, he's being kept back. He's being sort of pulled down through no fault of his own. And there's a threat of his brilliance, his excellence as this amazing police officer. And of course, the added spin on that with his father and what he went through. And again, you have in Alex Wheatle a situation of true self-determination, but also someone who is planted within South London, Brixton, as a person who doesn't know anything about Blackness, himself being Black and being sort of raised in a care home, planted in Brixton when he's 15 years old, and sort of finding out who he is through his journey through the sort of the turbulent times of the late 70s, early 80s in Brixton. And the last one, which you guys will see hopefully on Sunday, is Education, which was something which at least we was continually being told about. Education is the key. And it's kind of a mixture. It's about my narrative to some extent, but planting my narrative within the late 60s and the 70s, when we had situations of institutional sort of, I wouldn't even call them schools, situation where they put a lot of West Indian people in a situation they called educationally subnormal schools. And they were just basically there to dump people there and see them deteriorate. So I was playing with my narrative, which happened in the early to mid 80s, and planting it into that time. So again, it always had to end up in education, always had to end with self-liberation. And I think that's what we've always done. Small Acts is about self-liberation, but the last one had to be about, the future and our children, and us clearing the path for them. So it was kind of simple. It was kind of simple.
So stepping into those films for a moment and being on set, just taking your mind back there, is there a standout moment for you? Was there a standout moment for you?
No, I think it was more to do with the people on set, really. There was so much love, a lot of love on that set. I mean, we did this thing where we had apprenticeships, when every department had at least one or two Black kids who got the opportunity to be on set and to learn. So that was great, because, again, what happens in front of the camera has to be sort of replicated behind the camera. So that was one of the things. And just working in general, it was a beautiful set. It was a wonderful set to be involved in.
And just finally, we spoke about it a little bit at the beginning, but, what had you anticipated and what would you like people to get from the films overall?
Don't know. I don't know. It's not my job. My job is to make the best thing I possibly can, and for people to come up and decide what they need to do, take from it and whatnot, just like you having a conversation with a young man. other people having those discussions. I mean, look, what I'm interested in basically is the future. And all I wanted to do was to reflect on the past, to see how far we've come and to see how far we need to go. And that was it. So if anything, to answer your question, for me, it was just to sort of see how far we needed to go and what we have achieved to get to this point, which is immense. We've achieved so much in the short period of time that we've been in this country. I mean, immense. It's incredible. So, but we're not stopping. We're not projecting 30 years in the future. So what will it look like? No. We're focusing here. We're focusing on the now, and we need to push things forward as we move along. Because again, it's like, it's not about tomorrow, better tomorrow. It's about better today. It's better now. We only can make a future if we focus on what's happening right in front of us, one day at a time. Best lesson I ever learned from my mother.
Well, it's, you know, it's really opened up so many different conversations. It's got so many people thinking. And I guess just as a final add-on, if you like, I think there are people who have watched the films, I should say, and then they've wondered what to do next. I mean, it's not for you to necessarily have all of the answers, but were you concerned about people kind of having that sense of, wow, this happened, and now what do I do with this? Was that ever a concern of yours?
Get on with it. Don't be asking the question. Get on with it. What are we talking about? Get on with it. Whatever you need to do, whatever you want to do, get on with it. Don't dilly-dally. Get on with it. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, you know, oh, shut up and get on with it. And again, you don't necessarily have to have the answers to everything. It's okay. You don't have to have, you know, sometimes a third of an idea, not even half an idea, a tenth of an idea. You got a hunch. Go with it. Find out whatever it is, whatever profession you're in. You know, just you don't have to have the whole idea. I said, you're not going to have it. I never bloody had it, but you have a hunch, and you just go with your nose and do the best you can. Like I said, take it one day at a time. And you know, it's not about I have the answer to it now. Okay, no, because that might not be the answer, but at least you sort of in momentum to go and try to find out what you want to do or how you want to do it. So you know, take a chance. You know, and the worst thing anyone ever told me is to be careful. Don't be careful.
Lovely. We'll finish there. Thank you so much, Steve McQueen. It's brilliant to talk to you. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you very much, mate. Take care.